Can you share a bit about your journey, how QCC Collection came to life, and what inspired you to focus on advisory and asset transformation?
Sure. Thanks, Nikolina, for having me on the podcast. So QCC Collection started almost 7 years ago. Uh, yeah, I guess we started out of Hong Kong before COVID and registered a business there. And I basically sort of tapped in from my previous experiences as COO and CEO into the sort of more advisory space. And yeah, started working out of Hong Kong with clients in Shanghai, Hong Kong, and then sort of broader Asia. And as mentioned, we are advisory company and business. We work with hotel owners and resort owners, etc., on projects where we help them either realign their businesses or we help them launch into market. And we also do a great deal of work when it comes to operator selections work. So owners will have an asset and we will work with them to find the best operator for that asset in any given market that they're in. So it's a bit of an educational journey in most instances, but and nonetheless very challenging and very rewarding.
Amazing. So what's your day-to-day like now across your projects? Now I know you're involved in everything from repositioning hotels to strategic like growth advisory.
Yeah. So look at a day in a week here for me is really just following up with the existing clients that we have. I do a lot of advisory with hotel owners who has several assets within their portfolio. So we look at the operational setup and obviously we work on making the assets more profitable. So we sit on their side as owners representatives and work with the operators to ensure that the ROIs are in those sort of areas they should be, and they're increasing. From our perspective, it's about making sure that the assets are really firing and making the right returns to the owners long term. So a lot of that journey really starts when we negotiate the hotel management agreements or leases for an owner, and so that we can have full transparency in a term sheet and then take that through to the operations. So we sit on that ownership side, and then we drive the businesses for them that way. Throughout a day, I mean, there's always lots of different things that are happening, but generally, yeah, we spend most of the day in that aspect, and then we're following up on new leads, etc. Because we're doing a lot of new developments as well, where we're helping the landowners and investors on properties and say greenfield projects. We also have a lot of time spent with architects, with planners, things like that, where we're helping interior designers, where we're helping everyone come together and obviously present to an owner, etc., on their project. Exactly. Yes. The earlier you start and get everyone together, the better. It's far less fragmented, and then it really just comes together as one, which is what any owner wants. I do want to say a lot of hotel owners, a lot of resort owners, they don't necessarily come from hospitality background. They buy assets or they buy projects as an investment. So we really like to spend time educating them and getting them for the full view of what the potential is. Should they buy or should they end up developing the different assets? So it's very much about value creation, I think, and it's like redefining the differentiation in that space so that they get an understanding of how to scale the properties, etc. Look, I think, and sure, and I mean we're across it. So we have a number of clients overseas that's been rewarded as well, awarded Michelin key, etc. And so look, I think it's significant in this space in Australia, in particular, because we don't really have Michelin stars, as you know. So the keys are something different. I think it's first time, so people are always gonna take that with a little pinch of salt and say, okay, let's see how that develops. But I think sort of the overall view on it has been that it's good for market and it's good that some of these sort of not so common properties are being recognized, and I really like that. And there's nothing wrong with all the other categories of top 50 hotels and all that stuff. It's fabulous, but it tends to be a list of the same names every year. They go up and down, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're all fabulous hotels, and I love staying at many of them. But I have to say that I think with Michelin, there's a good opportunity to create something different out here. Time will tell if the food part is not also going to follow. I think there's definitely a great market for it in Australia. So it's just a question of seeing if that's happening or not. Look, I think the biggest changes or the biggest ethos that you have to put into boutique hotel spaces is that you are designing with design has to be the point of view of, presenting something. It's not just the palette. So you have this really clear, stance on craft and I guess subculture of what you're delivering. So it's really like, it's driving power when it comes to pricing, but also the organic reach, which has to come with the clients, right? So you really need to try and work on that. And I think when we talk about boutique hotels, we always talk about experiential gross margins, and it is really what it is, right? You're not just looking at ADRs or average daily rates. You're looking at these experience, what can we call them, baskets almost, where you have, uh, they could be all different kinds, but say chef residences or, wellness protocols or whatever it is, like where you just basically are able to create these high margins add-ons that are really lifting the total. And I call it, instead of RevPAR, I call it TrevPAR. So it's total revenue per available room. And that just increases that whole setup. And I think that's really the difference between I guess, a standardized, large branded hotel that has a flag on it, where standard operating procedure is, common, as the boutique hotels instead has this great opportunity to be way more nimble, and create these wonderful, impactful opportunities and options for not only ROI, but also from a guest perspective. It's really kind of what we're looking for. You have an opportunity to really create some amazing partnership with local curators in your area, right? So yeah, that's how I look at it. No, I agree. I think it's about you gotta, I don't know, you gotta reposition your playbook a little bit, right? Like you gotta be just not like everyone else. And if you want to be boutique, then you really need to turn that on and be unique and not follow everyone else's prompt. Yeah, look, to be honest with you, I look at flow through, right? So we look from top to bottom and we see how that top dollar ends up down at the GOP and ends up as a net operating income. So it's really about the cost of creating something and the return to the owner. So it's different, I think, and I've managed bigger portfolios too, which was definitely not boutique, but in that space, you're really like your flow through is really straightforward because you don't have those overheads that you would normally have when it's boutique. But in boutique, you also have an amazing opportunity to create these extra add-ons, which I mentioned before, and that just gives a different point of view on revenues. I think the creation of the right boutique property also, it gives the owner a better long-term view on the potential returns in the experiential areas. And as I go back to wellness, I go back to offerings that are super, super unique to that property. And that really drives that business. And so that's some of the areas we're really looking at. The other thing I would say when we look at the sort of day-to-day operation as well, just to go back to that, is that it's really personalized service that's the key in boutique. And unfortunately, think, and this is the norm in bigger hotels with chains, etc., that people just don't have time, right? It's more like it's a service. There's nothing wrong with the service, and the hotels are great. I love them all. But at the end of the day, it's not perceived as someone having 20 minutes to check somebody in on the front desk as being all right. It's like, okay, it's 2 minutes and it's in and out, right? So I think those are the things in the narrative that needs to be looked at. But I think, we create that clear value bridge for the owners where we show them where the money is throughout the P&L, and that's after reviewing obviously the operations. So when I'm any doubt. Mhm. Look, I think, how do we say this? It's more like you have to look at your model to make sure that it works. So it's like how many rooms are you going to have? If it's a new build, then it's different. You drive the feasibility, you work around that whole thing so that you have the entire project put together in a way where you can see the returns depending on what you buy. But if you say buy an existing hotel, you refurbish that, then you work with what you have. So it's really about sort of creating that, and you say authenticity, but it's really about content, right? It's really about creating this amazing opportunistic model where design is balanced with depth, and I think that's really key here. It's all nature based. I think it's wellness based. I think that's what we are seeing, and I think it's also regenerative, experiences that is measurable, and I think that's really important. And it has been on the forefront for the last couple of years, but it hasn't really kicked off to this sort of 2.0 scenario we're talking about, where everything is measurable and everyone can see that it's actually making a difference. But I think wellness is just, and you're seeing this on several developments that are happening in the cities now as well around Australia with Gurner and all these other guys. They're really going hard on this because they know that that is a massive industry that's not even been tapped into yet. So I think we're finding that there's a lot of stuff in that space that's really interesting. Sleep is one thing that we sell in hotels, and it's something that in most places are not really sort of thought of. I think that's the most important. I think you're looking at sort of this guided nature retreat setup as well, where you are taking everything from the outside in, and you're creating this amazing, wonderful lodging experience that's going to incorporate all those aspects, including wellness. I think you're going to find that there'll probably be more of those membership models as well that's going to offer this in the space, which is great. But it just depends on how it's rolled out and how it's offered. I think a lot of the boutique hotels has a really unique opportunity to get a lot of people in their hotels on a daily basis versus the larger ones that tends to be empty from say 10 o'clock in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. The boutique hotels has a amazing opportunity there where they can really fill their lobbies and they can fill their restaurants with people because they are offering something unique. Say they have a curation of arts that are changing on a monthly basis or whatever it is, and it just gives people an understanding on opportunity to come back and trial and stay longer. And at the end of the day, any hotel we're dealing with, it doesn't really matter what it is and whatever the owner's asset is. What we try and create is belonging, and belonging is key for anyone to come back. And I think with boutique hotels, you just have this opportunity to create something where it's a memory that's created for someone and they then want to come back automatically. So if you stay at some beautiful boutique hotel somewhere, you remember it and then you say, hey, I'm going to stay there next time. Because we're creatures of habits, right? I travel a lot, as you know, in Japan, and I stay at these wonderful small boutique hotels, and I just keep on coming back because it's just so unique. and it's really nice to experience that, and not that there's anything wrong with the big flags and all that stuff. I don't talk down on them at all, but it's just different, and it gives you a different, I think, aspect on and view on what a service can be. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Look, there's no doubt that smaller boutique owners and operators in that space are far more flexible with making changes and adaptability when it comes to AI, right? They can take something on board, they can create that opportunity for themselves versus the larger companies where there's so many layers of management that have to sign off, protocols and whatever. The independent hotels can trial and error things really, to their own points and to their own needs, etc. So I think the AI has to be embodied into everything we do, and there's no doubt that it's part of what we're doing going forward. But I think the important thing is when you work in the boutique space is to understand that AI is never going to take over the personal sort of creation or connection that you have with the staff or the team members there. That's one of the things you are buying when you go and stay at a boutique hotel is actually the connectivity with someone, and it's actually the flexibility when it comes to bookings or it comes to service in general. That's how I see it. But I think like AI, when it comes to all the meta search and it comes to all the OTAs and all that stuff, I mean, there's no doubt that all of these products out there are going to help, and it's going to streamline a lot of our things and a lot of our services, etc. It's just a question of understanding how they work and how adaptable they are, I think, and then it comes back to the team and how connected they are to it. But I mean, we cannot forget that. I mean, hospitality is about people. It's about servicing people, and it comes back to that, I think, personal. Yeah. Look, I think sometimes when you're creating a boutique product, it takes a lot longer. So if I had a magic wand, I would want to add 6 months in patience to the owner so that they don't feel that they have to get the return that fast. But it's just when you have an almost stock standard hotel and you're opening it up, you can see the returns a lot faster in general versus also the square meter cost and in fit out and all these different things. So boutique projects are just longer term, I said, projects where an investor will look at that or needs to look at that and say, okay, it takes a little longer to get the returns. Um, that I think is where I would use my magic wand. But look, this it's again, it comes back to the education. It comes back to what they want with their properties and how they actually they want to see a return, right? So I think it's just about certainty, and it's about giving them really clear understanding of when they're going to see the returns that they believe in. If they're going to open something that's created really uniquely and it's costed a lot of money per key versus a stock standard 20 square meter room from one of the chains, well, then that's a different conversation altogether. I think look at what we're doing now is we're looking at a lot of in particular in Australia, we're looking at a lot of projects that are mixed use. That's really our we believe that's the future because construction cost is so expensive. So we're looking at modular buildings. We're looking at, we work with modular builders anyway in general on a number of projects where we have preferred suppliers, and they're able to essentially cut 20 to 30% in cost, and then they're able to deliver amazing, from a timeline perspective, amazing hotels within a very, very short time versus the normal construction time, right? So that gives an opportunity, but there's no doubt that it has to be in a mixed use setup so that you actually have, lodging opportunity, you have your wellness or spa opportunity, and you have your learning areas or your public areas, etc., with micro venues or F&B venues in one. That's actually then overall giving a different point of view from revenue stream perspective. And so they're feeding each other at all times. And I've been part of a number of these mixed use projects, and they just work. They just really work. And I think long term, when it comes to an investment, for anyone who are doing stuff in the major cities in Australia, that's the way forward. They have to go that way because you have to have the revenues feed up each other throughout 365. It can't just be something that's seasonal. Very welcome.